Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Stillwater. This morning, our service leader is Reverend Mark Christian. Musicians, Annye Love and Doug Williams. We are a diverse religious community seeking spiritual experience and all forms of knowledge in an atmosphere of acceptance, love, and respect. Our mission is to protect and perpetuate religious freedom, tolerance, and knowledge, to challenge injustice, and to nurture and serve the wider one another and the wider community. We'll continue with announcements by Terry.
After the service, please join us in the social room for refreshments and conversation. The Storytellers group is scheduled to meet at noon today in the forum room as they do each fourth Sunday. Participants share their stories, written, oral, or anything else, and sharpen their storytelling skills. And feel free to join in. The book discussion group will meet Friday, February 27th in the forum room to discuss The Mere Wife by Maria Davana Headley. Maria Davana Headley. Video calling is available for those who can't attend in person, and for more information, contact Susan Bullard. This coming Saturday evening, February 28th, from 5 to 8, is the kickoff dinner and discussion to launch the pledge drive in the month of March. Dinner is free, and there will be discussion groups to share thoughts on the future of our church, particularly considering spending for the coming 2026-2027 fiscal year. If you've already handed in one of these sheets, you are on the list. There's still time to sign up. There are sheets like this in the social room. You can also register on CH Meetings or use the QR code. Next Sunday's sermon will be provided by Reverend Mark Christian. His sermon title will be When Feminism Meets Humanism. This is the fifth in a series of 6 sermons on Unitarian Universalist history. Next Sunday is the first Sunday in March, so it will be committee meeting Sunday after social time. Join us Sunday, March 8th at 12:30 when Alicia Light Angel will lead the second Sunday forum on human design. Discover who you designed yourself to be before the world told you who you should be. If you plan to attend, you can give Alicia your name, birth date, birth time, and birthplace, and she will print out your human design prior to the forum. Yes.
To make that easy for you, I made little slips and put them on the table over there so you can fill it out. It's also got my phone number, which I'm not giving out on the internet, but you can also text it to me or give me a written form. They're on the back table.
Thank you. I like easy. For those new or relatively new to our church, Susan Bullard and Mark Christian will be holding newcomer orientation sessions at 6 p.m. on Monday, March 23rd and Monday, March 30th. Will there be a sign up for that? No, just come?
There will be later.
There will be later, okay.
It's not one down.
All right, perfect. We're assembling a group from our church to pick up trash in Stillwater's annual trash off on Saturday, March 28th from 9 to noon. Groups meet at Couch Park. There's a sign-up sheet in the social room. The city's watershed quality division provides gloves, safety vests, and trash bags, and you can also earn service hours, community service hours. If anybody else has an announcement, please come up to a microphone.
Hi, I'm Lee Bell. I announced a couple weeks ago that my kids were working on their Scout Eagle project in a couple of weeks. I did get a flyer. So if you'd like to come, my mom and I are cooking a whole bunch of meals from scratch. Let me know when you're coming, and we'll get you on the list so we have enough food for everybody. We have needs for help with the trail maintenance that they're doing. So things like moving dirt and gravel, helping cut down trees, and that's pretty hard. But we also have need for people who can serve food or maybe wash dishes. So if that's more your speed, we'd still love to have you out. We do need help with a wide variety of things. So we'd love to see any of you guys there. Yes? It will be at Camp Sylvia Stapley, which is just barely west of town on 51.
It's probably on the flyer.
It is on the flyer. The address is on the flyer. If you plug it into any Maps app, it should work just fine. But if you drive out west on 51, it's about 2 miles past the speed limit change sign where you get to 65 and are actually hitting highway speeds. I'm sorry. It's Redbud Road, I believe. So, Redlands. There we go. Thank you. It's on Redlands. It's not even a full mile south of the highway. Just turn off and go down. It's the former Girl Scout camp, if you were familiar with it as that. It has since converted to an all Scout camp. So, yes. So the problem is that the camp has been poorly maintained since I was there, and I'm potentially a lot of you guys' kids' age, because I'm 40 now. So it's kind of fallen below the threshold of what needs to happen to maintain the trails out there. So the Greenbrier is kind of overtaking things. They've got a bunch of invasive thorn trees that need to come down. But the trail erosion has gotten to the point where the sides of the trail are here, and no joke, there are parts of the main trail where it's 18, 24 inches down. What my kids are trying to do for their Eagle project and for their adjacent conservation project is to backfill and create water bars to redirect the erosion, the water that is eroding the trail, back toward the top pond, which used to be a great place to fish or do like pond life science experiments, look at stuff under the microscope or just with a magnifying glass when you were little. I remember loving that. The pond hasn't had water in years. My kids and my parents have actually been out there, we've been out there trying to do some of the stuff, at which point the kids went, this is a way bigger project than we can tackle. What if we do it as our Eagle project, as a spare project for a conservation award that Boy Scouts does, and do a whole slew of things and pull in a bunch of people, do it all at once, because we got a little bit of water back in the pond, just a little bit, for the first time last year. So we're getting to the point where if we can make a big effort, then we may be able to preserve that for its intended use so that folks can get out in nature. And they do rent to anybody. It's no longer just a Girl Scout camp. It's no longer just a Scout camp. They will rent to anybody who wants to come out and camp. So it is kind of a nice place, and it's local. So, yes.
What time is it again?
It is literally set up to sundown. The Scouts, their troops will be camping. My kids have a troop, and there's a brother troop in the same organization. So there's about 60 Scouts between them. Hopefully a lot of them show up with their parents. And yeah, if you have any more questions, I will be here after service. But mostly just show up. And if you want to do any of the actual trail maintenance, please wear long pants and wear gloves. Don't want anyone getting hurt. Of course, bug spray, sunblock, hats, all that jazz. But good. Okay, sorry.
Other announcements?
I'm Shiitake Mama, and this is the Spiritual Minute, brought to you by the Spiritual Experience and Religious Education Committee. And if you would like to share something or some experience or some reading or some song, I just put that in, that is appropriate for this minute, please let me know. This morning I'm reading the Desiderata by Max Ehrman. It was written in 1927, and Desiderata means things desired. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even to the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Especially do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune, but do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you consider him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations, in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful. Strive to be happy.
Thank you.
We're ready for a prelude.
I'm just going to say that in the light of what has been going on around us that we know is happening, Doug and I decided to do some Black spirituals. So that's what you've been here today.
When the storms of life are raging, stand by me. When the storms of life are raging, stand by me. When the world is tossing me like a ship out on the sea, thou who rulest wind and water, stand by me. In the midst of faults and failures, stand by me. In the midst of faults and failures, stand by me. my friends misunderstand, those who knowest all about me, stand by me. When I'm growing old and feeble, stand by me. When I'm growing old and feeble, stand by me. When the life becomes a burden and I'm nearing chilly Jordan, O thou lily of the valley, stand by me. O thou lily of the valley, stand by me.
God, a gift from life itself. Come, let us worship together, for this is the day we've been given, to live in, to love in, and in time to die in. Let us rejoice in our capacity to think, feel, hear, and understand. And let us rejoice in the promise and possibility of this day. Let there be light to drive away the darkness. Let there be wisdom to shine on the unknown. Let there be love to heal our aloneness. Let each of us be a light for one another.
Our opening hymn is number 354, We Laugh, We Cry. Please stand if you're able.
There we go. So I keep probably about 3 or 4 little stories in my pocket, Buddhist and Taoist stories, and so I thought I'd let you in on one that one of my favorites. Some of you may have heard this. I know Mark has, and so here we go. You'll have to use your imagination on this, and it's called the Spring Festival. And so you need to imagine southern China, a hilly region where there's lots of woods. And there's a path that goes down from a monastery. Actually, the path goes by the monastery, Buddhist monastery, and it goes down to a village. And it's the time of year where they have a spring festival, which is full of dancers, shadow puppets, lots of interesting food, things like that. And so one of the old monks, we don't know how old he is, but he's pretty old. He's kind of bent over a little bit and gets around with a rod and with a staff. And one of his few desires is to go to the spring festival. He really likes that. And he does that every year. And it's probably about 6 or 7 miles away. And so a young monk accompanies him to help him out. And this young monk has been in the monastery for a couple of years. He's doing pretty good. He's got the various things memorized that he should have memorized, and is an excellent student. So anyway, we kind of back up from the scene a little bit, and we see these 2 monks heading out on the trail. And it's a winding road. It's going past the trees. And the old monk is starting to point out things. It's a beautiful spring day. It's been raining the previous days, but it's a blue sky. It's just a wonderful day. And the old monk is pointing out plants that are starting to flower and interesting things in the distance, like, oh, look, that rock over on the side of the mountain looks kind of like a face, something like that. And this is a great chance for the young monk to be together with this older monk, that they can actually spend some time together and maybe he can learn a thing or two. And so they're chatting back and forth, and this is going wonderful. And they come around a bend, and they encounter this creek, which is usually very shallow and has some wood laid over it where people just cross over. But because of the rains, this has now become flooded, and the wood is gone. And so it's kind of wide, maybe 30, 40 yards wide, something like that. But it's shallow. Okay, and the water's moving fairly slow. So they're kind of looking at it, the 2 monks. And finally, they look up and down the creek, and they see off to the side, on their side of the creek, there's this beautiful young woman. And she's standing there, staring across the creek, which is flooded. And she's in complete finery of clothes. This is obviously somebody of some importance or some wealth. Has a large hair or head ornament of some kind made of gold that has gold stitching in the clothes. This is somebody that has money. And so the monks look over and they see her, and she looks at them and they bow, and she simply turns away and looks back over across the now large creek. And so they're kind of thinking to themselves, And so they both walk over to her, because she's kind of got this scowl on her face. And they say, young lady, well, the old monk says, young lady, you seem to be in some type of trouble, or something's going on. How can we help you? And she simply turns to them. They bow, and she looks back across the creek with just kind of a scowl on her face and says, I need to get to the spring festival, but because of the river, I can't ruin my clothes. And so the young monk is thinking to himself kind of smugly, well, this is karma. This is what you get for being like that. And so he's not showing it on his face, but he's, kind of inside grinning about it. And he's thinking, well, I wonder what the old monk is going to do. And so the old monk says, I tell you what. Of course, in Chinese it sounds completely different, I'm sure. Tell you what I'll do. How about you come around and climb on my back, and I will carry you across that creek. And the young monk is just completely, it's like, oh my gosh, that goes against several rules that we have, okay? Surely he's joking. The young lady immediately, without saying anything, comes around to the back and jumps on his back. And so here's this old fellow with a staff, and he's kind of, he's got about 140 pounds now of woman and fancy clothes and big jewelry on his back, and he's kind of stumbling around a little bit. And this completely confuses the young monk. And so the old man starts across the creek. And it's a little bit muddy, so you can't really see what's under there, but it's only, about that deep. And but he's making his way. It's tough. It's very tough for him. And the young monk is just kind of watching this, pretty confused at this point, and actually starting to get a little worried about the old monk. And so they make their way across slowly, and they get to the other side, and the young lady just simply jumps off the old monk's back and just starts going down the trail to the village. And the young monk is just kind of shaking his head about this whole thing. The old monk turns around to him and smiles, and then just starts on his way again towards the festival. The young monk is still just standing in the water. So he follows the old monk. So they go for a few miles, and now they're not talking to each other. The old monk is still pointing out things like, oh, those are nice flowers. That's an interesting tree over there. And the young monk is actually standing or walking about 2 steps back, thinking to himself, has he lost his mind? I mean, he's so old, and it violates, things that we just don't do. We don't touch women. We don't look at women, closely and things like that, and a bunch of other things. And so this goes on for some time. And as they're going down the road, the old monk keeps talking and turning to the young monk and just sees this kind of scowl on his face, and finally stops and turns to the young monk and says, what's wrong? What's wrong with you? Something is obviously eating at you. And the young monk just explodes. He's like, look, I don't understand what in the world you're doing. You're fairly strict to us while we're in the monastery. You've been doing all these things that just, I don't understand what's going on. Is there something wrong with you? That young woman obviously was a person of privilege. She was being taught a lesson by the universe, and you just completely disrupted it. I mean, what's wrong with you? And the old monk simply turned to her and said, I put her down at the edge of the river. You're still carrying her. So there's at least 4 things, 4.5, that I've been able to pull out of this. Okay, I'll let you figure out the rest of them, or if you want to ask me later. But the main one is the way that we let ideas and thoughts stay with us, okay, when they're counterproductive. Now, Pema Chodron talks about this fairly often. And in Tibetan Buddhism, the word is shempa, which means sticky. And so some thoughts are very, very sticky, right? Kind of like tree sap. You can't wash it off with water. It just stays sticky. So if you're at work or if you're at a family get-together or something, and somebody says something very mean to you, that'll stick with you for a while, won't it? I mean, it's got some shempa to it. And that's what the old monk is showing, is that even though this student is doing well, memorizing all these things, he's still living in the automatic world of stickiness of thought. And so that was the main lesson. And I still got it. Maybe some of you do too. Anyway, thanks.
This morning's reading is The Task of the Religious Community by Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind us all. There is connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is a church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed.
And it's time for the offertory. Our church is supported by your donations. And this month we share the plate, or the entire plate will go to the Pastoral Care Ministers Fund.
Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down. Oh, yes, Lord. Sometimes I'm almost to the ground. Oh, yes, Lord. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. Although you see me going along so, oh yes, Lord, I have my troubles here below. Oh yes, Lord. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. One day when I was walking along, oh yes, Lord, the heavens broke and love came down. Oh yes, Lord. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Glory,
Thank you. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. I love that song. And I love hearing the voices fill in around here as people join in singing. But that was a sermon from 3 weeks ago. I do love that song because for me, the church is the home of my soul. My soul has many holes, but it is one of them. It's one of those places where I can turn to and discover who I am, what I am, and where I'm going, or where I hope to go. As I said, that song is very special to me. When you go into the UU ministry, you have to finish your Master's in Divinity degree, which is a 90-hour master's degree, which is, of course, after your bachelor's. You have to go through a year-long internship. You have to go through 6 months of hospital chaplaincy. Then you go before what's called the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, where they judge your competency, judge your experience with all these different things you've done, and check out all these about 100 books that you have to have identified that you've read and be able to answer questions from. But you started off by doing a 10-minute sermon. And that's what I used to open my 10-minute sermon. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. I'll tell you, I was really nervous because I'm going to get up there in probably what was the most important meeting of my life at that point in time. I said, I know I'm going to lose my voice. It's going to return again, or I'm going to have to figure out a new way to start the sermon at the last minute. But I love that because it does capture something that I duly love about my experience in church. Of course, the truth is I could have not even got up here at all and just told you to read the words "Till we laugh, we cry again." I think that's written by Alicia Carpenter. Is that maybe right? I don't recall. But anyway, that whole point of we laugh, we cry, we live, we die, these are the very things which we bring to church. And that's what my sermon is about today. It is fulfilling our vision, which is the theme for our upcoming Operating Fund Drive. I always try to say Operating Fund Drive instead of the canvas because canvas is kind of a misleading term, and we don't really use it fully because to canvas a group is not just to ask them for money, but to ask their opinions. And I do not pretend for a second that we will ever fulfill our vision. If we have a vision that we can fulfill, it's not a very good vision. Yeah, I've always loved that line from the poem that one's reach must exceed one's reach, or what's a heaven for. What we can grasp is not as far as what we can reach. One's reach must exceed one's grasp. So it's always in the process of becoming. It's always in the process of drawing nearer or drawing far, how we go about it. Over the years, I've worked with a lot of different colleagues on things, and I was working with a colleague one time on a project, and we were discussing something, and I came up with he and I together, he says I did it, but I think that he did it, but anyway, he told me I should claim it. And that is that when the church is working right, the wounded become whole, and the whole become wise. The wounded become whole, and the whole become wise. And make no mistake, we are all wounded. We are all wounded in some parts of our life, or some part of our life, or some time of our life. So we bring our wounded selves together and we heal. And after healing is begun, we can become wise. And that is what I'm committed to. When you go into ministry, you're told and taught and find yourself thinking a lot about what your calling is, what you're here for. It's not just a job. You couldn't do this as a job if it was only a job. There's too many demands on it. It's too pressing. It has to be something deep within you that's feeling fulfilled. And ministers have always talked about your first calling is to the individual congregants you're sitting with, you're being with. I have a relationship with you, and my calling is to you. Until the needs of your calling exceed the benefit of the needs of the institution. And then you become committed to the institution until the institution's asking for things that go against the larger sense of calling to God or the Spirit or life or love or whatever you're going to call it. And you keep shifting to the higher degree of difficulty, the higher degree of calling, to the individual, to the community, to the ultimate. You have to keep yourself focusing to be working at that bottom level and keeping in track with those other two. And I want to tell you that this, as we embark on this time we're going to ask you for money to operate the church over the next year. This is, in my opinion, a healthy church. You are a healthy church. We're growing. This church has a commitment to quality leadership. And it doesn't put a stamp that says every leader has to do it this way. The different people who've been present in this congregation operate in very different ways. And the congregation has found ways to stand behind them, to support them, and to steer them. And that's a sign of institutional health. That is that wounded becoming whole and the whole becoming wise. Now, I need to tell you that there's another part to that equation that my colleague and I were visiting about. And when things are wrong, the whole become wounded, the wounded seek power, and the wise head to the hills. When the church is working right, the wounded become whole and the whole become wise. When it's not, the whole become wounded, the wounded seek power, and the wise head to the hills. And I want to tell you, we're very definitely in that first category here. This is a good church. It's a solid church. It's funny because one of your temporary ministers here, Bob Hill, who would do a weekend and do bookend sermons back in the 2000s, he once told me this was the most contentious group of people that he'd ever worked with. I have had some of you tell me that too from those eras, that you were a very contentious group, that every annual meeting got bogged down in some kind of parliamentary debate. But we've evolved, we've grown since then. The wounded have become whole. So this coming Saturday, we're going to get together and have a meal, some barbecue. Now, for those of you who are not meat fans, vegans or vegetarians, not veterinarians, vegetarians, I guess there's a difference there. I should tell you that those of us who've been planning this, all of us are meat eaters, but we have spent an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out a good quality alternative for people who are vegan or vegetarian, because we care. You've made a choice there. We want to support your choice. We don't want to say, well, you've made your choice, but to be with us, you've got to do this. So despite that's not our path, we've spent an inordinate amount of energy and time trying. We'll see whether on Saturday night whether we came up with a quality option. But it has been central in our task, and a great deal of our time has been talked about putting that in place. But I want to go back to coming to church, why I come to church. What we'll be doing this Friday is to start articulating our vision. And then we use the money to fund the vision, to try and fulfill the vision. Vision, ways to fulfill it, balancing them up, putting them in line. I want to tell you something about my past. I grew up, as I've mentioned many times here, in the First Unitarian Church of Oklahoma City, which I would eventually, 44 years later, return to lead. But I was born into that church. I was christened into that church. Actually, I was born about 2 blocks from the church. So literally in the shade of the steeple. And I was always an active churchgoer as a kid. My mother she saw to it that we went to church, from the time we were young. And even when I got older and was allowed to make my own choice, I still went. I still went on Sunday morning. Even when I was out on Saturday morning until 2 or 3 in the morning, I would still get up and go to church on Sunday morning. Because it was the home of my soul, yes, but I didn't put it in those terms. What it was, this is where the people I liked were. This is where something was going on that I felt was valuable. Now, actually, in this era, which is the late 60s, I was born in 57, so this was the late 1960s and 1980s, a massive amount of turmoil was going on in the culture. And the Unitarian Church stood up. Unitarian Universalist Church stood up. We were the ones who published the Pentagon Papers when no one would. When all other publishers were afraid of the retaliation for publishing the Pentagon Papers, it was the UUA's Beacon Press that published it. And I was proud of that fact. And as I'm going to talk about next week when I preach about UU history and feminism meeting humanism, in Oklahoma City, and I think in many cities, the first meeting of the National Organization of Women was at a Unitarian church. A UU church hosted the National Organization of Women. And I was proud of that, even though I'm not a woman. But it was signs that this was something that was doing it. But more than that, it was the people. This is where my friends were. This is where the people who I understood and who understood me were, or tried to understand me at least, were. And I longed to be in their presence. It was the liberal religious youth was the technical term, and my joking names for it are little red yo-yos, and perhaps more accurately, lusty, raunchy youth. But that's an aside. But it was more than that. You see, one of the things that happened to me when I got into high school, I was in our theater group. We had a group called the Congregational Players. And we put on we started we did Streetcar, We did Streetcar, we did 6 characters in search of an author. We did some of Pfeiffer's vignettes. We did Neil, not Neil Diamond. Simon, yeah. I was going to say Diamond. That's not right. Anyway, we did all these things. And what happened there, as a high schooler, I guess I was still about the same height in high school, I got to know the adults in the church. Any of you who've ever been in a play knows that the bonds that you make with people that you've been at rehearsal with every couple of days or every day for a period of time and been in performances with for several weekends in a row, know that the bonds that you build are great. They're powerful. They're sustaining. And I think that's why I stuck around in the church when my brothers did not. My brothers went to church in the same way I did. My brother closest to my age, actually became the church janitor. So he was being paid to be there. But I went because of the people. And so what happens when you graduate high school is you've had this tight group of people who are your same age, and all the people who are in your particular class move off. And you generally come back at holidays, at Christmas, and maybe spring break, and that kind of things. And that works okay for a year. Then the next year you come back, well, the ones who were juniors now are seniors, and then the year after that, the ones who were sophomores are seniors, and pretty soon, you don't know any of those kids. So they're no longer in your group anymore. But what had happened to me is that since I got involved with drama and knew these adults, I delighted to see them, and they delighted to see me. And that was the strength that drew me in here. It's where I felt at home. It's where I felt whole, perhaps even holy sometimes. And that's when the church is going well. When the wounded become whole and the whole become wise. And I still do that. That happened several times in my life. Of course, when I went to college, I'd come back when I was in town for the weekend because there was no UU church in Durant. There is now one in Sherman, Texas, Denison, Texas, just about 30 miles down the road, so that would have been better, but it wasn't the case. But then, of course, I went into work, and I moved to to Ardmore, and there was no church there. And then I moved to Tulsa, and I started going to All Souls for a while, and then Hope. So I found my way back into church. And then I came back to Oklahoma City, and at first wasn't doing too much. But then, September came along, first Sunday of the church year, and I went to church. And there was a meeting that day for 20-somethings. We were really trying to focus on getting 20-somethings back into church and building up that cadre. And I was at that point in time 26. And that's when I met the woman who would become my wife. Now, she cheated. She was 30 at that meeting for the 20-somethings, which was a point of contention in our relationship for many years. But she said, Mark, you always bend the lines. I said, yes, I do. I know. But it's not fair for other people to. But again, it was where the people who delighted me were. It's where something was going on that I felt was significant, where I had deep bonds, some of which I couldn't even begin to explain, but they are there. And that's what I see here. That's what I want here. Now, I'm going to tell you my vision, where I'm at. And this is my personal, as a retired minister, as a retired Unitarian Universalist minister. I look at Stillwater and think that this is fertile ground for us to have a very solid congregation. And this is a good congregation. The only problem is it's just not big enough. We aren't in enough things. There's not enough of us to be in enough places. So I think that this community could support a congregation of 150 quite easily. Now, whether this building could or not, that's another question. But I think the community could sustain it. And that's my vision. And part of my vision coming back here, because there were times that your congregation here, this congregation, my congregation, because I am a member, has had a full-time minister. And I'm hoping that will be in the future. It's not in the immediate future. There's not any talk of that. There's not, at least none that I'm aware of. There's no planning for it. And so one of the things that I hope I can do when I'm here, because I do have professional skills, I do have some knowledge and have some experiences, is to try and prepare the ground here in this church so that when the time comes and we're ready to take a step up and say, this is what we need to do to truly fulfill our vision, which we have articulated to each other, that we'll be in a better position to do it. You see, no longer do I view that first level as person to person. I'm not your minister. I'm not your minister. I'm paid to come here and preach. I don't have any responsibility for anything other than this Sunday morning. That's all I do. The rest I do out of love and experience. But I see this as something I can do. So my sense of calling these days is primarily to the community, to this church, and to the larger movement of Unitarian Universalism. And this is how I understand my calling today, how I'm fulfilling my vision, is that when I preach here, when I preach at Channing, what I'm doing is to try and create the most solid UU presence in this community that I possibly can, knowing that that is what's going to grow the church, knowing that is where we're going to find our sustenance and our support and our strength. So what I hope you'll do between now and Saturday when you come back for our special dinner and presentation is to think about what brings you here. I'm sure for many of you, it is the people. This is where your friends are. This is where you go to see it. For some of you, maybe you just need a break somewhere where there's not quite as much insanity around, or at least a different kind of insanity. Maybe that's what brings you in here. Maybe it's the music. Maybe it's the fact that you can be in here and sing hymns that you don't have to cross your fingers at certain phrases on. That you sing hymns that you're not going to find objectionable to your spiritual path, period. And sometimes I still find ones that I do find, like the spiritual just saying, I thought it was nobody knows but Jesus, but Jesus never came into the hymn, did it? Because we wrote him out. Anyway, we have visions. We all have visions of what brings us here. Individual visions, community visions, citywide visions, worldwide visions, visions about love and life and God and family and friends and justice. Oh, can't get out of here without speaking about justice. So on Saturday, we're going to ask you to come here, and before we ask you specifically for money, which we will do, make no mistake of that, we will ask you for money. It takes money to run this place. The city of Stillwater won't keep our power on for goodwill. It takes cash on the barrelhead. I hope that you'll give some thought about what you bring here, what brings you here, and what you get from here. And when we do this dinner, afterwards we're going to break up into some small groups, and we're going to talk about 4 specific areas that I think have some vision possibilities for us. I will be leading a conversation with the help of Sherry Kern on trying to create a community that is more intergenerational, that is more family connected, that families have good ways of bonding together and building together. Because one of the things I've seen in the congregations that I've served is that growth comes after families bond. To go to a dinner and find all these families sitting together with their kids interacting and their kids going to each other's birthday parties, the same way that I got to friends in the UU church, it's in that family, that intergenerational aspect, which is also because the theater group was an intergenerational group. That's where I fit into that. So one of the things I'm going to talk about is how do we create an environment that is more family oriented, more connecting the family, that builds parents doing their classes, which we can offer parents as resident theologian, parents as social ethicist, the Our Whole Lives program of sexuality education. Those are all in that area, but it's broader than that. There will also be a conversation around our spiritual paths, how we can make this church more reflecting what Taki was talking about in Desiderata, that spiritual connection that we can build here that is so hard to find other places. One of the groups will be talking about the building. How is our facility being used? Is it being used right? Now, I'm a believer that you always have, periodically, you have to stop and say, stop everything, put a button in it. Let's presume we don't have any patterns of use right now. How would we design using the facility? That means nobody has dibs on a particular time or month or room or that sort of thing. But it's good for a congregation to start with a tabula rasa occasionally. That's not what they're going to do, but they're going to talk about the kind of things that might be possible with our facility. And Mike, there was a fourth one. What's the fourth one I'm missing? Okay.
Connecting to the congregation and community.
Outreach, community outreach. Thank you, Donna. We've asked Donna to lead that conversation about social justice, community outreach. So community outreach, family connections, spiritual development, and the facility. We want you to bring your visions, not bring your axes to grind. Bring your vision about who we are and who we want to be and what you would feel fulfilled by being a part of. This is a place where the wounded, and we all are wounded or have been wounded, can come and heal. And as we heal, we can become wise. This is a place where being together matters. We found the strength of being together, as in the words of We Laugh, We Cry. And it's a place where you can recharge and re-encounter your deepest, highest self and soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are. Born and reborn again. Return again. Return again. Return to the home of your soul. Amen.
Our next hymn is number 318, We Would Be One. Please stand if you're able.
And may the direction they inspire sustain your heart, your soul, and your whole self. Amen.
That concludes the recorded portion of the service. We